All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish this last unit with standard deviation. This is the smallest lesson we've had so far. So if you're not done with the other lessons, please finish them before finishing this one. So let's go ahead and do this all together. So Jessica is 6 feet tall, which is 72 inches. So instead of working with feet, we're going to work in inches here. And has always been taller than most women. She was curious about how many people were taller than her, and she looked online and found all of this data below. She found that the average height of a woman is 65 inches with a standard deviation of 3.5 inches. The average height of a man, 70, with a standard deviation of 4 inches. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to go and we're going to take our average and we're going to add the standard deviation, and we're going to subtract the standard deviation. So we're going to take the average and then subtract, and instead of writing standard deviation, I'm going to write SD from now on. Oops, I spelled average wrong. Wow, I've been out of school for too long. Average. Okay, so I'm going to do just the women's height. You guys are going to do the men's height on your own. So the average height of a woman is 65 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and take that 65. And I'm going to add and subtract the standard deviation. So if I add 3.5, that becomes 68.5. And then I'm going to take my average again, which was 65, and subtract my standard deviation of 3.5. That gets me 61.5 or 61 and a half. So that is what I just did now, or these numbers are considered to be one standard deviation away from the average, 61.5 is one standard deviation below the average, whereas 68.5 is one standard deviation above the average. And what's significant about knowing that is that 68% of your data is going to be between your one standard deviation away. So what that means for this particular problem, since we're talking about women's height, it means 68% of the women surveyed. So of the women surveyed, 68% of the women surveyed are between these two heights. So are between, and I'm going to put the smallest one first, so 61.5 inches and 68.5 inches. And this is, they're asking on the slide these numbers here, so make sure you don't forget to fill this in. 68% of women are between 61.5 inches and 68.5 inches. If we wanted to think of that in feet, because I know it's kind of hard to envision what that is in feet, we would just divide it by 12. So 61.5 divided by 12 is 5.1. So that's like 5'1". And then 68.5 divided by 12 is, I believe it's like 7. Yeah, that's like 5'7". So what this means is that 68% of the women surveyed are between 5 feet 1 inches and 5 feet 7 inches, which that makes sense because if you think about the women you meet, the majority of women that you meet, they are between 5'1" and 5'7". But of course not everyone is. Some people are shorter, some people are taller. So in order to include everyone else who is not in our one standard deviation away, we're going to do it again and find, okay, how many people are 2 standard deviations away? So what we're going to do is we're going to take these two values here, and I'm going to add and subtract the standard deviation to that. So 61.5, I'm going to subtract the standard deviation again. And then for 68.5, I'm going to add the standard deviation. This is 0. This becomes 58. And then this becomes 0, 12, 72. So 58 inches and 72 inches, those are 2 standard deviations away from the average. So remember, the average was 65. So 58 and 72 are 2 standard deviations away. And what that means is that 95% of the women surveyed, so I'm going to say of women, are between, and it's going to be these heights now, between 58 and 72 inches. And then again, if you want to convert it to feet, you can divide by 12. 58 divided by 12 is 4.8, so I'm going to say like 4.8. And then 72 divided by 12 is 6. So this is like saying 95% of women are between 4.8 and 6 feet. And that completely makes sense. I would say the majority of the women I have met, they're definitely between the heights of 4.8 and 6 feet. But of course, that doesn't include everybody. So to do one more standard deviation, we're just going to take these values here, 58 and 72, subtract the standard deviation one more time. So I'm going to do 58 minus 3.5 and 72 plus 3.5. These are going to tell me the numbers that are 3 standard deviations away. So this would 0, 54.5, and over here 75.5. So 54.5, let me rewrite that because that's very sloppy. 54.5 and 75.5 are the numbers that are 3 standard deviations away. Okay, so kind of a little recap. 1 standard deviation away were these green numbers, 61.5 and 68.5. 2 standard deviations away were these purple numbers, 58 and 72. And 3 standard deviations away are these pink numbers, 54.5 and 75.5. What is significant about the 3rd standard deviation is you're going to find pretty much all of your data between this. So like 99% of your data is going to be between your 3rd standard deviation. So for this problem, 99% of the women surveyed are between these 2 heights here. And we're going to convert them to feet in a second, are between 54.5 inches and 75.5 inches. So 99% of women surveyed are between 54.5 inches and 75.5 inches. Let's go ahead and figure out what that is in feet. So I'm going to divide by 12. This is 4 feet 5 inches, and 75 divided by 12. This is about 6 feet 3 inches. So this says here that 99% of the women surveyed are going to be between 4'5" and 6'3". Again, that makes sense within the context of the problem. What you're going to be asked to do next is to do the same process, but for the men's height. So remember, you just start with the average, add or subtract that standard deviation, and then you just go from there. You can come back and check out this video if you want to do it at the same time.